Today we're talking about the NFC West, specifically the rookies and which ones you should target in your fantasy football drafts. We'll look at the age and contracts already on the depth charts, the ADP of the rookies, and give a projected timetable for their possible payoffs in fantasy. Welcome to Shut Up Football. I'm Jeff Stoltzfus, that's Kevin. There are a couple of tight ends in this division that need a serious look, and we're going to do something that we promised this channel would never do. Math. San Francisco 49ers. The Niners got depth for their depth and teased us with a trade that never happened. Winners. Brock Purdy. They just keep bringing him weapons. Losers. Elijah Mitchell. Or maybe he's a winner. You can't get injured from the bench. In the first round, they took Ricky Pearsall, wide receiver out of Florida. He's 23 years old, 6'1", 189 pounds. He runs a 4.41. In college, he had 2,400 yards receiving and 19 total touchdowns. He's a great route runner with reliable hands, shows good concentration, and makes stupid catches. He also tests my strength to believe in a man named Ricky. It's a stupid name. Deebo Samuel is 28 years old. He is signed through 2025. Brandon Aiyuk is 26 years old. He's on the final year of his rookie deal. Everyone thought he might get traded during the draft, but it never happened. Better to get something back while you still can. Except they're better with Aiyuk, and I think they know that. You can't mortgage a future draft pick against a potential Super Bowl run. Jauan Jennings is 26 years old. He's on a one-year deal. He had a great Super Bowl performance, but he didn't do lickety shit for fantasy during the season. He was outside the top 100 wide receivers in fantasy points. There's also Ronnie Bell, Danny Gray, and Jacob Cowing, but we'll come back to them later. Aiyuk could still get traded, but I wouldn't do it until closer to the trade deadline, which is early November. That gives them plenty of time to see what they have in Ricky Pearsall. Plus, it could potentially drive up the price on Brandon Aiyuk. Maybe there's a playoff-bound team that feels like they're only one Aiyuk away from a Super Bowl run. Now, Pearsall will be on the field from day one, but his fantasy value might be a little erratic to start. Eventually, though, he'll be the guy that everybody's offering you trades for. Ricky Pearsall is being mocked about 13th overall in standard rookie drafts, right in front of Xavier Legette and Adonai Mitchell. You should be so lucky. Likely he's going earlier. In the fourth round, they took Isaac Guerrendo, running back out of Louisville. He's 23 years old. He's got good size at 6 foot, 220 pounds, and tons of speed, running 4.33. He shows great athletic potential with an RAS of 9.89. He had the top athleticism score for the position, but it didn't lead to much in college. He had 1,300 rushing yards, 42 receptions, and 18 total touchdowns. So is he primed for a breakout at the next level, or is he just a ton of athletic potential that can't put it all together on the field? Christian McCaffrey is 27 years old, signed through 2025. Last year he had 1,400 yards, 18 total touchdowns. Elijah Mitchell is 26 years old. He's in the last year of his rookie deal. He hasn't had many touches over the last 2 years. He's a good back, but he's had a ton of injuries. Unless Elijah Mitchell finds a cold market, I think this is his last season with the Niners. There's also Patrick Taylor Jr. He's 26 years old. He's on a one-year deal, and he's new to the team. The Niners don't have a great track history of drafting and developing running backs over the past few years. However, Isaac Guerrendo does have the ideal size and speed for the position. He could become a running back one here at some point in the future. However, he's not taking Christian McCaffrey off the field for any reason. He's capped as a change of pace option for at least the next 2 years. However, he is a must stash in case of a Christian McCaffrey injury. Isaac Guerendo's ADP is about 41st overall, near Tyrone Tracy Jr., Will Shipley, and Brandon Allen. You can debate the values of that group, but I know at least one person who should absolutely target Guerendo, the fantasy manager that has Christian McCaffrey. In the fourth round, they took Jacob Cowing, wide receiver out of Arizona. He's 23 years old, 5'8", 168 pounds. So he's a little undersized, but he's a burner. He runs a 4.38. He's got an RAS of 6.28, and the knock there is his height, weight, and shuttle time. In college, he had over 4,400 yards receiving, 34 total touchdowns. He was productive, and not just 1 year, every year. He's got good film, and he's more than just speed. You can see he knows what he's doing, and he's got a great ability to manipulate defenders to get open. So where does Jacob Cowing fit in on this depth chart? There's Danny Gray. He's 25 years old. He was a third-round pick 2 years ago. He's had 1 reception on 7 targets, and he's signed through 2025. Ronnie Bell's 24 years old. He was a 7th-round pick last year. He had 6 receptions and 3 touchdowns. This year could be a struggle for Cowing. Even if he works his way to the 4th receiver spot, he's still going to get way less targets than George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey. but he's got great film, tons of speed, and decent draft capital. The real problem here is, I could have said the same thing about Danny Gray. If Cowing climbs the depth chart, it's likely next year. Jacob Cowing's ADP is 48th overall, near Brendan Rice and a bunch of tight ends I like. Personally, that's where I would grab a tight end. But if you're loaded at tight end and need wide receiver depth for the future, he's a good one to stash. Los Angeles Rams. Team Ramrod! The Rams had an Aaron Donald-sized hole to fill on their defense, and they went to work. Winners: Demarcus Robinson. No Pukas this year. Losers: Kyren Williams and Zach Evans. In the first round, they took Jared Verse, edge out of Florida State. Lance Zierlein called him twitchy and compact, which is great for an edge rusher, but less so in a Tinder profile. He's been called an instinctual bully, and he's got good speed to bend the corner and get to quarterbacks. In the second round, they took Braden Fiske, defensive tackle, also Florida State. The Rams traded up to get him. He's got a fast first step and a relentless motor. He wreaks havoc on the line. I couldn't decide which one of these guys I wanted to break down for the Rams. And ultimately, I decided it didn't matter because they're both going to be day one starters here. You want them both in IDP formats, along with last year's D-tackle Cobie Turner. You can't replace Aaron Donald, but this line is full of monsters. In the third round, they took Blake Corum, running back out of Michigan. He's 23 years old, 5'8", 208 pounds. He's got 4.53 speed and he ran an RAS of 8.29. In college, he had over 4,000 yards from scrimmage, 56 receptions, 61 total touchdowns. He was massively productive. He's a good runner, but what I love most about him is his patience and his vision. He's tremendous at following blocks and forcing defenders to adjust and then take bad angles. He's also got great contact balance, and unlike your mom, he's not gonna go down easy. He's been compared to Doug Martin. Kyren Williams is 23 years old. He's signed through 2025. Last year, he had 1,000 yards rushing, 32 receptions, and 15 touchdowns. The Rams made him a focal point of their offense. So what the hell is this shit? Oh, right, he also missed 4 games with an ankle sprain, which kind of makes his numbers more impressive. Ronnie Rivers is 25 years old. He's on a 1-year deal. He's a UDFA from 2022. Zach Evans is 23 years old. He was a 6th-round pick from last year. A lot of people had high hopes for Evans, myself included, but for whatever reason, he slid in the draft and didn't make much noise last year, and now he just fell further down the depth chart. There's also Boston Scott. He's 29 years old, new to the team, on a 1-year deal. Drafting Blake Corum doesn't kill Kyren Williams' fantasy value. It just muddies it. In a lot of ways, they're very similar. Williams has earned the lead back role here, but I think it's going to develop into a two-headed monster here. They'll probably both be productive. However, you might see them cannibalize each other's fantasy value from week to week. Blake Corum's ADP is about 18th overall. If that holds, I think I might flip a coin between him and Marshawn Lloyd. Corum is also a great value pick in best ball drafts right now. In the 6th round, they took Jordan Whittington, wide receiver out of Texas. He's 24 years old, 6'1", 205 pounds. He runs a 4.52. In college, he had over 1,700 yards receiving and 6 touchdowns, which is pretty meager production for 5 years. He's a big dude, he's got decent fight, he's not particularly explosive, but he does a lot of dirty work over the middle. Puka Nacua is 23 years old. He was a 5th-round pick from last year, and we all know how that worked out. Cooper Kupp is 30 years old. He's signed through 2026. Demarcus Robinson is 30 years old. He's on a 1-year deal. Tutu Atwell is 24 years old. He's in the final year of his rookie deal. And Tyler Johnson is 25 years old. He's on a 1-year deal. Whittington isn't taking anyone's job this year. In fact, I don't have high expectations for him this year or beyond. With 2 starters on the wrong side of 30, there is the possibility that he could find his way into something in the future, but I'm not banking on it. Sean McVay called him a core special teamer, and I think that's what he is. That and depth. Jordan Whittington is not being drafted anywhere in the top 70 picks. Seattle Seahawks. It was the first draft in the post-Carroll era. Luckily, they didn't have major holes. Title of your sex tape. Winners. Sam Howell. They didn't draft a quarterback. He has 1 year to convince the Seahawks they don't need to next year, and 2 years to convince them of another shot at a starting gig. Losers. Offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb. Welcome to the NFL. We got you a guard. In the first round, they took Byron Murphy II, D-tackle out of Texas. He's 21 years old, 6'1", 297 pounds. He has crazy athleticism. He's got an RAS of 9.23. In college, he had 70 tackles and 8 sacks. He's explosive. He's got great hand skills. He was the first defensive tackle taken off the board in this draft. The depth chart is Leonard Williams. He's 29 years old, signed through 2026. However, there is an out after this season, but not without serious dead cap money. Last year, he played 18 games, had 62 combined tackles, 5.5 sacks. He's not going anywhere. Dre'Mont Jones is 27 years old. He's signed through 2025. He could be cut whenever, but again, lots of dead cap money. Last year, he played 17 games, had 49 tackles, 4.5 sacks. There's also Mike Morris, 23 years old. He was a UDFA from last year. A mid-first is a lot of draft capital to give up for a guy not to see the field in his first year. But Williams and Jones are paid to play. So yes, Byron Murphy is worth taking an IDP, but temper expectations in his rookie year. In the 4th round, they took Tyrice Knight, linebacker out of Texas El Paso. He's 23 years old, 6'1", 233 pounds. In college, he had 390 tackles, 8.5 sacks, 2 interceptions, and 4 forced fumbles. His physicality shows up on tape. He's got a ton of production. My only concern with him are reports about him playing outside of structure. Highlights don't show the bad plays, and I just don't have enough time to deep dive on this aspect. All the athleticism in the world isn't worth much if you're playing out of position. The depth chart is Tyrell Dodson, he's 25 years old. Jerome Baker, he's 28 years old.
Drake Thomas is a UDFA from last year, he's 24 years old.
There's no commitment here to any of these guys. 4th round draft capital doesn't mean Tyrice Knight is going to just slide into a starting role next year. It's just enough that the opportunity is there. I'm not investing in Tyrice Knight, and I'm okay if I miss out here. In the 4th round, they took A.J. Barner, tight end out of Michigan. He's 22 years old, 6'6", 250 pounds. He's got an RAS of 8.75. In college, he had 64 receptions for 600 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns over 3 years. That's pretty low production, but as I talked about in other videos in this series, Michigan didn't have a huge passing game to begin with. The video the Seattle Seahawks put out for A.J. Barner highlights was less than 30 seconds and featured 1 block and 1 pass. And it was from Indiana. Way to get me hyped. Barner's a good blocker, and I did like his tape when I found it elsewhere. Noah Fant is 26 years old. He's signed through 2025. Last year, Noah Fant played 17 games and had 400 yards receiving, 0 touchdowns. That was down from the previous year, but not by a ton. They haven't featured the tight end much in Seattle over the past few years, and when they did, Fant was one of 3 to get involved. But Will Dissly and Colby Parkinson left the team this offseason. Should that fill you with optimism for Fant? Even when he was with the Broncos, he never topped 700 yards or 4 touchdowns in a season. Pharaoh Brown is 30 years old. He's on a 1-year deal. He's never been a consistent fantasy asset. Barner won't do much as a rookie, but he could become the backup to Fant next year. I think he could be a tight end 1 here in time, but that's really just guesswork. The truth is, he wasn't featured in college, and now he's gone to a team that hasn't featured the tight end in years. What you want to know is, going forward, with a new coach, will they get the tight end more involved? For that, we look to new OC Ryan Grubb, who previously coached the Washington Huskies. Person on the internet posted a thread stating Grubb's tight ends get 50 receptions and 600 yards receiving a year, which we can check out by looking at last year's stats from Washington. Not from just one guy. But if you combine the 1st and the 2nd, or even the 1st and the 3rd tight end here, yeah, true enough. And that's 14 games. Expanded out to 17 games for the NFL, that's just over 700 yards, which if you're wondering, would have put them about 10th last year for tight end receiving yards. So do I like A.J. Barner? Yeah, I do, actually. But it's mostly speculation and projection. When it comes to a rookie draft, what am I willing to pay? According to Fantasy Pros, A.J. Barner's current ADP is about 65th overall. That's a no-brainer for me, absolutely. He's a much safer bet than anybody around him there. The problem is, in my most recent Dynasty draft, Barner was right next to Cade Stover, and you gotta go Stover there. Stover had better college production, and you actually know who's gonna be throwing him the ball in 2 years. A.J. Barner is the consolation prize if you miss out on Cade Stover. Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals had a lot of picks. If the bulk of them work out, this team could turn around quick. Winners: Kyler Murray, for getting a ton of offensive help. Losers: James Conner. He can beat cancer, but he can't beat Father Time. Well, that just got bleak. In the 3rd round, they took Trey Benson, running back out of Florida State. He's 21 years old, 6 foot, 216 pounds, he runs a 4.39, and he's got an RAS of 9.76. In college, he had 2,200 yards from scrimmage, 25 total touchdowns. He's got the ideal size and speed for the position. He has great agility and contact balance. He's been compared to Breece Hall. Benson was the second running back drafted this year. James Conner is 29 years old. He's in the final year of his deal. Last year was a career year rushing for him. He had over 1,000 yards. DJ Dallas is 25 years old. He's signed through 2026, but they could cut him after this season for little dead cap money. Michael Carter's 25 years old. He's on the last year of his deal. James Conner is the only thing in Benson's way, and I think he's likely gone after this season. It's unlikely the Cardinals invest in a 30-year-old running back next season. Trey Benson is talented enough to eat into James Conner's workload this year, but I actually don't expect much. As long as Conner is productive, I think they're just going to run him into the ground. Mean, but not uncommon. Trey Benson could get on the field some as a rookie, but I think the takeover is next year. Trey Benson's ADP is currently 12th overall. If you're lucky, you don't need all these great wide receivers he's surrounded by. In the 3rd round, they took Reiman, tight end out of Illinois. He's 24 years old, 6'4", 271 pounds. He's a freight train. What's crazy is he's got an RAS of 9.92. Next Gen Stats showed he had the top athleticism score for the position. In college, he had 420 yards receiving, 5 touchdowns. That is some paltry production. Reiman is a massive dude with unequaled athleticism. He's an elite blocker. A lot of NFL analysts loved him and called him a unicorn in this draft. Could his low college production be a product of how this offense decided to use the position? Or was he a shit route runner? Trey McBride is 24 years old. He's on the 3rd year of his rookie deal. Last year, he had 825 yards and 3 touchdowns, which I'd call a breakout considering the quarterback situation last year. Elijah Higgins is 23 years old. He's a 6th-round pick by the Dolphins last year, who got waived. He's a former wide receiver trying to transition to tight end. Reiman's film didn't do much for me. I saw a big blocking tight end, not a future fantasy asset, and his college production showed me the same. But then all these testing metrics come out, and he looks like untapped potential, and then the Cardinals take him in the 3rd round, and that's really high for just a blocking tight end, so I have to stop and ask myself, what's the truth about Reiman? And that's when I remembered 2 guys. Kyle Juszczyk and Brock Wright. Both are super athletic guys with really high RASs, and what do? A lot of grunt work for their team. Are they good for fantasy football? Sometimes, but not often. Trey McBride is still the tight end 1 here and the one you want in fantasy. Reiman's addition is bigger for Kyler Murray and for the run game. He's a solid player, but not worth a roster spot on your dynasty team. And I don't know why, but for some reason, I'm willing to die on this hill. Reiman's ADP is currently 60th overall. Just a tip. For that money, I'd rather have AJ Barner. I was originally going to look at Marvin Harrison Jr., but his ADP is 1st overall, so what's the point? I'd rather talk about 6th-round pick Tejhaun Palmer, wide receiver out of UAB. He's 24 years old, 6'1", 210 pounds. He runs a 4.5. He's got an RAS of 9.57. In college, he had 1,400 yards, 9 touchdowns. That's over 3 years. He's good at using his weight and physicality to box out defenders and fight for the ball. He's got a big catch radius. The depth chart is obviously Marvin Harrison Jr., the 1st-round pick. Michael Wilson is 24 years old. He's a 3rd-round pick from last season. Last year, he had 565 yards and 3 touchdowns. Greg Dortch, who's 25 years old. He's on the last year of his deal. Last year, he had 280 yards and 2 touchdowns. I know Kyler Murray missed half the year, but Dortch has never really been a big piece of the offense. Chris Moore is 30 years old. Zay Jones is 29 years old. And Zach Pascal is 29 years old. All 3 of them are on a 1-year deal. After Harrison and Wilson, who I don't even love, it feels like this depth chart is crowded with uninspiring options. If I were the Cardinals, I'd make a trade before the season. Tejhaun Palmer is going to have to show something in camp to make this roster. Still, he's got an intriguing profile. Tejhaun Palmer is being drafted outside the top 70 right now, and I'd keep an eye out for camp reports about him. And that's the NFC West. This is the last of the divisional breakdowns, so if you haven't already, please go check out the others. And now, it's time to come clean. I have an announcement to make that may leave some of you shocked and dismayed. I didn't attend an Ivy League school and major in fantasy football. I'm a fraud. I was just passing by the storage room in my basement one day and thought, why not me? But unlike all the other fantasy football analysts out there, I'm just guessing. Truth is, I've been practicing fantasy football without a license. I'm embarrassed, ashamed, a little bit gassy. No doubt the police are already on their way, but we had some good times, didn't we? Remember when I said that Bo Nix sounded like an erectile dysfunction drug? They can't ever take that away from us. And he does. He does sound like a pill for boners. Oh, Kevin just took a cyanide pill. I'm gonna use his corpse to shield the bullets. If I can make bail, I'll be back next week doing our usual off-season thing, making fun of NFL news. Thanks for watching Shut Up Football. Say hi to your mom for me. We'll see you next time. Peace!
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys. It sound right, boy.
This is the last of the division.